There we go. And so welcome everyone. Today, we are so honored to have Dr. Keating back with us again. He is a longtime supporter of our chapter. I have lost count of how many times he has presented a topic for our members, and we just love him. And so today his topic is going to explore how to become a trusted learning advisor. And so since he's currently on a book tour, I'm going to call this his virtual book tour. And as I mentioned, you are each in. Your names will be added to the raffle for the books that we will be giving away in just a little bit. But first, I'd like to just go through some quick chapter announcements. So in case you have not met the three wonderful people on the screen, those are our incoming chapter president for this year and president-elects for next year and the year after that. We have been really busy recruiting chapter leaders and are so blessed to have folks that have stepped up to the plate all the way to 2025 and 2026. So that really shows their commitment to what we do in the community and their commitment to be part of the board and serve you, our members. Other folks on the board, and some of them present here, Ashley Sultan, Communications, Anita Torres, the Passionista. She is our Director of Certificate Programs. Walter Brown, VP of Member Engagement. So reach out, connect with them, and connect with our other wonderful board members. And last but not least, we have John and Alicia, who are my co-facilitators for the day. They are our new programs team members, and I'm very excited for what they are doing and what we are cooking up for next year for all of you. In case you didn't know this, our board is volunteer run. So we love our volunteers and we call them volunteeros because of all they do for our chapter members. And if you're interested, we do have some openings. Some are listed right here, but you can always reach out to one of the board members or go to our website for more information. Here's information about being a power member. In case you didn't know, power members are anyone who is a member of ATD National as well as a local chapter. There are many perks that come with membership. So please check out td.org power member, as well as checking out our website. And for all of you who are local chapter members, you get a free degree membership. If you have not taken advantage of that, I suggest you do. They've got a lot of great content that helps us stay current in what we do every day. Last, everything that we do here at the chapter, all the programming, is centered around the talent development capability model from ATD. You are able to take a free self-assessment on td.org. And again, we center our programming around this model. Today's programming is based on the organizational model as well as the personal, because it's lifelong learning. How do you continue to grow so that you are that trusted advisor? And the organizational piece, having the business acumen and learning how to be a business partner. So some dates of upcoming programs, save those, go on our website, check it out. And without further ado, we are being joined again by our longtime chapter friend, Dr. Keating, and we are going to explore how do we become trusted learning advisors? How do we get a seat at the table? What strategic things do we need to do so that we can guarantee knowing what's going on in the organization and being able to apply our skills and talents? So today, Keith is going to share some strategic approaches, some best practices, and just key core competencies that will help you ensure that seat at that decision-making table that's going to allow you to be able to move from being an order taker into that trusted advisor and help you build strong relationships with those stakeholders. Keith's career spans over 20 years. in the learning and development space. And I'm not going to keep talking. I'm going to give you the rights to everything, which I see you've already gone ahead and started sharing. So Keith, again, thank you so much for being such a long supporter, and take it away.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Just want to make sure, Rosa, you can hear me okay?
Hear you.
Perfect. All right, so welcome everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about the Trusted Learning Advisor. And so as Rosa shared, I do have a new book that's coming out October 31st, actually. And everything I'm sharing today is parts of the book. It's not the entire book, of course, but I call this session Evolve or Else. And it sounds a little bit ominous, and it's intended to, because we're at the precipice right now of a massive shift in the way that we work every single day. Our workforce is changing and is evolving without us even knowing it sometimes, and a lot of it is related to AI right now. And I know we've been talking a lot about AI in the industry, and everyone's talking about Chat GPT, but here's the thing, we should be talking about it because it is impacting us, and there is no future that exists without AI. And so we've got to be identifying how it impacts our business. So I think about Blockbuster, and I think about the way that they approach their business model. And Netflix went to them and tried to get them to buy, and Blockbuster laughed and offered a really small fee because Blockbuster couldn't see the future. They couldn't see even 3 to 5 years out. And I'm concerned for our industry because I think that we're facing that as well. We can see maybe the next quarter, maybe the next 2 quarters, but I don't hear us talking a lot about what's going to be happening in the next 3 to 4 years and what we need to do to support our talent in the organization. Because at the end of the day, we are the ones that are responsible for them, accountable for them. We're really the only ones who are thinking about them. HR doesn't really think about them in the same way. They're there to kind of protect them or the organization from a legal perspective, but we're really the advocates for our talent, and we are the voice of the talent. And so we've got to be thinking about what's coming around the corner that's going to impact them. So we'll be talking about that today. So evolve or else. When I think about our current environment, there's an acronym that I love from the military that I borrow, and that's VUCA. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. It's a great way to describe our lives, I think, as humans. It's a great way to describe our political environment right now, but it's also a great way to describe L&D. We're just coming out of COVID, and we helped and supported our organizations through that. We shifted overnight from being in person to being virtual. And we had a little bit of recognition, maybe a little bit of power at that point because they saw our value. But now, of course, the pendulum's swinging back the other way. We're moving back in office, and L&D is kind of falling to the wayside again. At least that's what I'm seeing from an industry perspective. And part of that is because of all of this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. And so we've got to be able to see through that. That's one of our value propositions, is to take a look at the future of our organization and the trends that are happening. So if you're thinking about how do we describe what we're going through, I think VUCA is one great way to do that. And I'm just curious, I use this term order taker, and as Rosa was saying, this session in the book is really to help us evolve from being order takers. And for me, I have always felt like an order taker in this industry. For me, I was born an order taker because I was born into a military family, and my father was a colonel in the army. And so I grew up not asking questions, not doing needs analysis, not trying to have critical thinking. It was I execute on what was given to me, or I speak what I've spoken to. And so when I came into the industry, that was still my mindset. And it was a perfect fit for this industry because we're largely treated like order takers. Someone else decides who, what, when, where, and how a learning intervention occurs. They make that decision and then they give it to us. And they tell us, I need you to create a 3 hour sales training. I need you to create a 2 day power skills training that's going to change our culture. They've already decided what the problem is, what the solution is to fix it, how long it's going to be, and what we need to do. And it really limits us. In fact, when I think about how much it limits us. I just learned something new recently, and maybe you all know this. I'm just curious. Did you know that the size of a goldfish is limited to the size of its bowl? I had no idea. John, did you know this?
I had that. No, that is news to me.
If you take a goldfish and you put it in a larger bowl, the goldfish is going to continue to grow. It grows to the size that matches the environment that it's in. And so we end up constricting that goldfish based on its bowl. And when I learned that, my next thought was, that's exactly how I feel in L&D, that I'm constricted from the constraints that my stakeholders and business partners give me because of the bowl that they're keeping us in. They keep us in this box of what it is that they believe that we can do or what it is that we should do. And we can do so much more than that. The problem is they don't let us. And I've been in this industry for 25 years, and for the first 10 years or so, I was definitely an order taker by trade. I didn't know any differently. And then I started to realize I have skills, I have some talent, I have some ideas and experience that could actually benefit the company and benefit my stakeholders. And by the way, what you're telling me isn't the right solution. So please, would you listen to me? And the answer that I usually hear back, and I'm sure this is going to resonate with all of you, you don't know my business. Rosa, do you hear that often?
Sorry, I was muted. Every day, at least 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah. You don't know my business. You don't know
Mhm.
my business. But yet, everybody knows L&D. Everyone in the organization knows L&D because somebody else is always making these decisions. And what's interesting is if you think about IT, I go to IT all the time and I give them an order and they immediately slap out that order. No, we're not doing that. That's not part of our policies. That's not part of our procedures. That's against, IT, whatever. And they don't execute my order and they do what they've set forth. Same thing for finance, same thing for HR. They own that business unit. They create these policies, procedures, and everybody falls in line except for us. When it's our turn and we try and say that, and they say, no, that doesn't meet our deadline. That doesn't meet our timeline. That doesn't meet our budget. That doesn't mean this. That doesn't mean that. And they're controlling us. And part of that is historically, we were born as order takers in this industry, unfortunately. If you think back to the 1800s, the Industrial Revolution, we had these manufacturing industries and things needed to get done. So an employee needed to move this widget from here over to here. So the manager says, I want you to go tell them, train them how to do this to this. And we said, okay. And we trained the employee how to do this to this. We started off as order takers in the training field. And then we evolved a little bit when organizations in the 1900s, early 1900s, mid 1900s realized, hey, they actually need to know a little bit more than just that. They need some other skills. They need to understand communication skills and listening. And so then they made the decision, they told us, and we executed on that. So we're trying to change century old behavior here from our business partners. And it's twofold. One, we're acting like order takers. And then two, they're treating us like order takers. So in order to change that mindset, we have to evolve from being order takers. We have to adopt a trusted learning advisor mindset. And that's what I'll be sharing with you today. And I'm going to give you a quick example about why this is important for us to evolve. Something that's tangible and real. About 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine on LinkedIn posted that Dr. Philippa Hardman and Gianluca Mauro, both of these, by the way, they're AI geniuses, they're wizards, they're scholars. Philippa's a professor. Gianluca Mauro has been involved with Cambridge. So the two of them together are trying to prove that AI is going to make L&D 75% faster, 75% cheaper, and 75% more effective. Now, when I saw this immediately, I loved it. I signed up for their project because I want the same thing. And I hope you want the same thing too. We want our teams to be faster. Of course, we want to save money where we can, but more importantly, we want to be more effective so that we can measure our effectiveness and our value. They're trying to prove that AI can do that for us. Now, AI can do a lot more for a lot of other business units in the organization. So there are going to be jobs that are potentially at risk as a result of AI. We are the ones who are responsible and accountable for preparing our organizations for this shift. But even if we just don't think outside of our business unit, if we think inside of our business unit, there is a definite shift in the way that we're working. But I see a lot of people who are still lackadaisical about this. Even when it comes to ChatGPT, I still see in my network, which is part of your network as well, on LinkedIn, people saying, yeah, I haven't really checked it out yet. I'm not really sure what it does. You're already behind the curve. All of us as an industry, we are already behind the curve because leaders in the organization today are asking these exact same questions. How can AI make me more efficient, effective, reduce my headcount, and increase my revenue? Leaders are asking that questions, even if it's not directly to you. The conversations are happening. And so all parts of the organization are trying to figure this out. But guess who should be driving this conversation? Us. We should. And it might feel like what I'm saying is out of our lane, but the reality is nothing should be out of our lane as L&D because we should be embedded across the business. We should be strategic business partners. We should be respected, sought after, trusted. And all of these are characteristics of being trusted learning advisors. So when I'm using that phrase, that terminology, and hopefully you start to use it as well, because that's what I want for our industry, is I want all of us to be trusted learning advisors. I guarantee that you have thought the same thing of, I want to be sought after. I want to be brought into the conversation before a decision is made, before that order is put together. I want to be trusted. I want respect. Why can't we get the same respect that technology gets, that marketing gets, that HR gets? We've got to demand that respect. But in order to get that respect, we have to be trusted learning advisors embedded in the business and strategic business partners. So I'll be sharing with you throughout this session ways that you can start to achieve that. Michio Kaku, who's a nuclear physicist, he is brilliant, loves education, loves learning. And one of his quotes is, knowledge is useless if it's not shared. And so today, this is me sharing my knowledge with you so that it becomes useful and you can begin to apply it immediately. I don't consider myself a thought leader. I don't like that terminology because thought leaders tend to talk in theory and more about kind of what you could do. I'm sharing with you what you should do, what you can do, because I've done it. My teams are doing it. Everything that I'm sharing with you is executable, is actionable, tactical, and applicable. Same with the book. The book is not theory. The book is 100% filled with applications. All right, quick question for anyone on this call. Are any of you a marathon runner? John, are you a marathon runner? Rosa, you're a marathon walker.
Put me in Rose's category.
All right, marathon walker. All right, anybody on here marathon runner? No. All right. Well, let's say hypothetically you were. So I ran the marathon once. It was, gosh, 2002. I trained for, I practiced, I stretched, and then I ended up running the New York City Marathon. And it was the one and only time I ran a marathon. My question is, and John, I'm going to pick on you again. Would you consider me a marathon runner today just because I ran it once?
No.
No, exactly. If I tried to run it today, I would pull my calves, I would sprain my ankle. I don't have my inhaler, so I would only last about 4 or 5 minutes. But there are some people in our industry who may have been practitioners once upon a time, and they've been in the industry for a long time, but they've stopped practicing and they're more talking about it. Maybe what they did a long time ago. One of the first strategies for us to evolve to be a trusted learning advisor is that we have to keep our L&D practitioner skills sharp. I don't care how long you've been in the industry. I've been in here 25 years. I started when I was 5 years old, if you're trying to do the math. I still have to keep my skills sharp. Technology evolves, businesses evolves, our talent evolves, we have to evolve alongside of it. And to do that means we have to be practitioner skills. We have to keep practicing. And luckily, you're here today. So you're doing that by being a part of ATD, by showing up. But a lot of our team members, a lot of our peers don't necessarily think that way. They think, I've been here for a long time. It's just learning is for other people. Like, I'm in learning. Why do I need to continue learning? The wrong mindset. We have to keep our skills sharp. So I'm going to share with you 5 best practices that you can apply. And the first, and this is so important, there is a science to the way that we learn. Now, I will admit I had no idea. When I first started in this industry a long time ago, didn't know there was a science of learning. I wasn't interested in learning it. It was just a job, and I was treating it like a job. And then eventually I fell in love with it, and it became a career. And then I found the power behind what we do. We have the power to change lives. Learning literally changes our lives. We wouldn't be here today without learning, without education, without knowledge. And it doesn't have to be just that formal construct of school, but we should be learning consistently. Now, there is a science to the way that we learn. For example, elaboration, having our learners explain back in their own vocabulary, their own words of what they learned. Learning transfer. Do they actually remember and are they able to apply it after they leave or finish that learning intervention? The classroom, virtual or in person, is a safe space. It's a beautiful safe space where we create these construct of ideas where we try and have people learn. But when they go back into the real world, or they go back into their job, does it transfer? Have we created that model that allows them to apply it back in their real world? Interleaving. A lot of times when we are creating training experiences or learning experiences, we're helping our learners memorize. And when they're memorizing it, and I'm not saying memorization is the right answer because it's not, memorizing is not learning. And when they're memorizing it in a chronological or a linear manner. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. What happens if just step 4 pops up? And then they're like, oh my gosh, but wait, this is step 4. It has to come after step 3 and before step 5. So what do I do? Well, interleaving is the approach for helping our learners learn, not in a chronological order, so that regardless of where they are in that model, whether it's step 1 or step 7, they can pick it up right at that moment. Spaced retrieval, Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve. We're going to forget. So do we have spaced out opportunities to help our learners remember that knowledge? And then generation, idea generation. You're generating new ideas or scaffolding it, connecting it to ideas that already exist. So these are 5 components of the science of learning. And there's a bit more. You should understand all of these. If you don't understand the components of the science of learning, you are doing a disservice to our industry, but more importantly, to your learners, because you're not making learning less difficult. I'm not using the word easy because, spoiler alert, you cannot make learning easy. Easy or learning by trade is difficult. And we tend to get caught up in this idea that there's some sort of learning technology out there that's going to make it easier for us. And it becomes a marketing ploy. Learning is hard, but understanding the way your brain works, understanding the neuroscience behind it, understanding the science of how we learn can help our learners learn better with a less difficult cognitive load, because the cognitive load is really what makes learning extremely difficult. So please, here's your first homework assignment, because you're going to have lots of homework today. I'm a professor. You're in learning and development. You should have expected this. Your first homework assignment is to understand these 5 components of the science of learning. The second best practice for keeping your skills sharp is that you have to have the biggest toolkit possible. And this is where our job gets really difficult, because our jobs are not easy. I don't think we get enough credit for what we do. Because again, we have the power to change lives if our stakeholders get out of our way and let us do it. We have to have the biggest toolkit possible. AI, LMS, LXPs. You have to understand all the vendors that exist. What are all the different vendors from an LMS? What's the difference between Cornerstone, SuccessFactors, and Docebo? Which one might you want to use in your organization? Who's using what one? Why should you pick one over the other? What's an LXP? What's the difference between Degreed and EdCast and Percipio? Why might you use one over the other? What's a MOOC? Why did MOOCs get started? When did they get started? Are they even still a thing? These are questions that you should be able to answer, which means that you have to do your research. You have to do your understanding. What's the difference between AR, VR, and MR? MR is mixed reality, if you're not familiar. Who are the vendors that support these? What kind of tools are available? Why might we use them? What are the right use cases for them? And why might we not want to use them? Because I don't know about you, but my stakeholders come to me often. They're like, hey, let's use some VR. Well, why? What's the business problem we're trying to solve with that tool? Oh, it's just cool. Well, just being cool isn't a right reason to necessarily use that tool. It is our responsibility to understand which is the right tool to use at the right moment to solve the right problem. Evaluation, understanding your assessments and your measurement and your data. There's Kirkpatrick's 4-level. There's Phillips' ROI model. There's Will Thalheimer's LTIM model. What's the difference between the three of those? When might you use one over the other? And it's important to keep our bias out of it. I don't think any of us actually like LMSs. There's a lot of people that don't like Kirkpatrick's 4-level. However, they're still applicable at some time or another. And so we got to figure out what's the right one to use at the right time. Then there's all these other methodologies that exist that we have to understand. Change management methodologies, leadership methodologies. One of my favorite ones that we should be applying is design thinking. And I've talked about this numerous times in this chapter and other ATD chapters. So make sure you check out those other recordings if you haven't already. So design thinking is part of the human-centered design family. You've got customer experience, you've got user experience, and then you've got design thinking. It's solving problems for humans. And spoiler alert, that's who we're solving problems for, our humans, our talent in the organization. So we don't have enough time today to drill down in this, but I'm specifically calling it out because it is a fantastic tool that all of you should be familiar with. And I think of it not just as a tool, but as my shield. And sometimes it can even be considered a safety weapon. When my stakeholders come at me and they give me an order and they say, hey, this is what we want you to execute, they've already defined the problem statement and they're wanting me to solve this problem. But rather than just jumping into solving that problem, I want to take a step back and I want to do some research. I want to do some needs analysis, some qualitative understanding, or some empathy research, which is the phrase that we use in design thinking. And so I tell my stakeholder, hey, I understand the problem, the order that you're giving. I'm trying to use the word order. I understand what you're wanting us to execute. But what I'd like to do is just take a little bit of time and take a step back and let's do some research with our frontline employees to make sure that this is the right problem that we want to solve. When you do that, you're able to collect all of this data from your frontline workers. And also, a spoiler alert, their voice matters so much more than ours. Because when I go to my stakeholder and I say, hey, here's what I think, they come back and they say, you don't know my business. I got to get this executed right now. I know my business. But imagine if you had the voice of your learners, you had quotes from them, you distilled problem statements from what you've learned from them, and then you went back to your stakeholder and said, hey, here's what our learners are saying. How can your stakeholder argue against their own business and the talent within that business? It's very difficult at that point for them to argue against it. Plus, that data gives you insight to the business, vocabulary, terminology that you can use, and it starts to help your stakeholders see you a little bit differently because you're using their vocabulary, you're understanding their business, you're embedding yourself in the business, which is part of being a trusted learning advisor. So if you don't know design thinking, definitely get familiar with that. I see Rosa just put the link in the chat. Thank you for that, Rosa. All right. So we've talked about all the different tools that you need to know, and there's a lot of them. Design thinking is one of them. The next best practice is a lot of us have direct reports, or you have teams that you're working with. You have colleagues. A lot of us aren't necessarily a team of one, even though some of us are. Something that you need to ask yourself, whether it's for the team that you're responsible for or just the team that you're a part of, are you a training function or are you learning and development practitioners? And the vocabulary that we use is important. There's a difference. The word training can invoke emotions compared to learning and development. So for me specifically, if somebody said to me, hey, Keith, you need to go to 4 hours of training, ugh, why? What did I do? It feels punitive. But if someone said, hey, there's a learning and development opportunity for you to go to, it feels softer. It feels like an opportunity for me. No one really says there's a training opportunity. It's like, ugh. For us as a function, training function tends to be order takers. They tend to be not strategic. They tend to be transactional. Where learning and development practitioners are practitioners. We are more of the business partners. We're leaning more towards being trusted learning advisors. So you have to ask yourself, what am I? What am I? Am I a training function? Is my team a training function? Or am I truly a practitioner? Have I put in the work and the effort to be a practitioner, to earn that respect? And then the next question you have to ask yourself, what would my stakeholders say? What would my stakeholders say about me? What would they say about our team? And if you don't know, or you haven't found out specifically, ask your stakeholder. Don't assume. Find out today how they view you. Because at the end of the day, I can call myself a trusted learning advisor all I want to, but it doesn't matter what I say. It matters what my stakeholders feel, say, and treat me as. It's just like a leader. No one puts leader on their business card. They even have business cards. I don't put it on my LinkedIn profile. I can call myself a leader, but if there's nobody behind me who's willing to be led, am I a leader? No, I'm not. Same with being a trusted learning advisor. My stakeholders don't agree, and I'm not a trusted learning advisor. So the question to ask yourself is, how are you developing your team, or how are you developing yourself? And one best practice that I use are stretch assignments. So every 6 months, I give my team and myself a stretch assignment. A stretch assignment is something that pushes you outside of your comfort zone, but not so far that you get burnt out. Like for me, learning math is going to burn me out. I'm ignorant when it comes to math, so I'm never going to give myself that type of stretch assignment. But I will learn AI. I will learn a new platform. I may learn, a new language or just a new skill. For my team, what I do is I give them literature reviews to establish a point of view. And this is really important for all of us as trusted learning advisors, as L&D practitioners. We have to establish our own point of view. And we have to stop regurgitating what other people say. It is important to learn from Josh Burson or me or Rosa, but it is more important for us to understand what they're teaching us, to critically think about it, and establish our own point of view based on our experience, based on our research, so that we are sharing it from our perspective, not just from other people's perspective. Because you know what? Josh Burson isn't always right. I'm not always right. Rosa may not always be right, although I feel like she probably is right more often than me. So just establish your own point of view. So here's what I do. I give my team literature reviews. So we'll pick a topic like change management, AI, leadership, design thinking. And I'll say, you have to go out and you have to read 10 academic journal articles or 10 research papers. You not just go to Google and Google something, but you have to truly figure out where the academic work lies. Spoiler, Google Scholar. It's a great place to go to get true academic researched work. They have to write a 1-paragraph summary for each article or paper that they've read. So that's elaboration, right? Talking about learning of science. It's being able to represent what you've learned in your own words. Then they have to write a closing paragraph about what's missing based on what they've read that could be applied in their organization, what's missing based on our industry, or a problem they might be able to solve based on what they've just learned. When they finish that, they have an established point of view based off of research, based off of their own understanding. They can share that with their stakeholders. They can publish it at ATD, at CLO. They can create a white paper on it. It's a tangible asset for them to use. And it helps us start to establish our point of view. Another idea is a book club. If you aren't doing book clubs in your team, I highly, highly recommend it. It's a great way for people to feel connected and to be talking about what they're learning. Again, elaboration, come up with new ideas based on what they're learning, generation, both of those science of learning, and gives you an opportunity just to connect as a team. So I do a book club every 6 months, and there's one book that I highly encourage all of you to read. In fact, not just encourage, it's your next homework assignment. You must read this book if you haven't already read it. And no, it's not my book that I'm going to recommend because you're going to read that already. So I don't need to even recommend that one. And then you're going to do a book club with it, with your team. So I don't need to recommend that. The book that I am asking you to read is Make It Stick: The Science of Successful Learning. This is one of the most important books, if not the most important book besides mine, that you're going to read in L&D. It is written by two professors who have researched so they're neurologists, they understand the science of learning, and then Peter Brown, who's a great storyteller, and they weave it together in a beautiful manner so that you can really understand how the science of learning works. Those 5 aspects, those characteristics I mentioned earlier, all from this book. This is where I've learned all of it. So please add it to your Amazon cart after this session. You want to save money, get the used version, but it is a must read. I see that, Walt, you've read it. Excellent. It's a must read. So add that. Okay, next. This is the last best practice for sharpening your skills. There's more in the book, but I encourage you to share your story. All of us have a story. All of us have success stories and failures. And to me, I love the failures. Fail stands for first attempt in learning. Fail is a positive data point. I don't think that we do enough in our industry to share the dirty stories, to share the grit. I feel like when I attend conferences and I read white papers and stuff, it's all the pretty version of what worked. And then I read it and I'm like, I must be the only one because I deal with a lot of bad stuff and a lot of failures, and my stuff doesn't really ever look this pretty. But I understand that we want to market ourselves and we want to help raise awareness for the value that we can bring. So I get it, but also share the dirty, nitty-gritty stuff. But consider maybe each year turn something into a white paper if you're not already writing articles. If you're not already involved in the award circuit, get involved in it. And I don't mean that just for winning the awards, although everybody loves to win an award. Here's why I love the award circuit. You have to convince somebody outside of your organization of your success. You have to clearly articulate the problem, how you solved it, and what the demonstrable, measurable outcome was to somebody who has no affiliation with you, your organization. It's not easy to convince someone of that. So it requires a lot of work for you and your team. Also, it's a way to bring your team together because I know for every award submission, it's not just one person that did it, it's all of us. Our instructional designers, our performance consultants, our project managers, our leaders, our trainers, our consultants, whomever, they all have a piece in the puzzle. But the challenge for them is they only see their piece. When you're writing your award submissions, you have to pull all of them together to take all of their contributions. And so when you're finished, you have this beautiful whole pie, and then everybody can learn about your project on your team. When you're finished with the award submission, who cares if you've won? You have, again, a tangible asset that you can then turn into a white paper. You could turn it into an article. You can share it with all your new hires. You can share it with everybody on L&D. You also can share it with your stakeholders so they can begin to see, oh my gosh, this is the magnitude of the work that you're doing, because we don't do enough job of marketing outside of L&D. Like we do a great job at ATD and all the other conferences, but what about marketing within our organizations? Award submissions is a great way to do that because you have a template you have to follow, and they're not easy. And sometimes, here's kind of a best practice that I'll share with you. I use the award submission templates to sometimes create my strategies. Like if I'm having a block with what's our strategy for the year, how might we approach this? I go to Brandon Hall, I go to ATD, I go to CLO, and I look at their requirements for their award submissions, and that gives me ideas on how we might want to craft our strategies for the year. If you're not already speaking in industry, especially ATD, speak, share your story. Make sure you're including data because data is so valuable in our storytelling externally, but also internally. Love data for that. So that way it's not just our potential biased perspective, but there's actual rich data that backs it up. So those are 5 best practices for how you can continue to develop your practitioner skills. So let me jump on now to strategy number 2. We have to cultivate relationships across the business. And this is extremely important because I see a lot of practitioners that think of L&D as a separate function. Like, yeah, we're over here. Like, we're really important, but we're over here. I see L&D as integrated across the entire organization, not as a separate entity. We have the opportunity to look holistically across all the business units because if we're using our relationships right, we can see problems across the organization and we can help this business unit connect with this business unit because they may be trying to solve the same problem. And we are that connector, that linchpin. And that's an important distinction for us. As I look at us as linchpins, it's not just solving L&D or training problems, but what problems can we solve holistically? Who might we be able to connect? Trusted learning advisors, they're built on relationships. So we have to be able to cultivate those relationships. So here are 4 best practices for cultivating your relationships. 1, identify the champions in your organization. Identify the people that like us. Now, there's a lot of people that don't like us. They're the ones that yell the loudest. They're the ones that fill out the surveys in all caps. We know who they are. It's a little bit more challenging to sometimes find the people that do like us because maybe they're not filling out the surveys, maybe they're not yelling that they like us, but we all have a few friends in the organization. So start with your friends and find out from them, hey, which one of your friends likes us? Who values learning and development? And create a network of those champions. I'll give you an example. At GM, we identified 300 champions across the organization. And each quarter, we invited those champions to a virtual call. It was about an hour long. It's not required. They can show if they want to. The first part of that call was sharing what we launched the last 3 months. It's a way for us to reinforce what we've already launched in case they missed our marketing materials or weren't aware or just needed a reminder. Then we share what's on the next 3-month roadmap of what's coming down the pipeline so that they have awareness of what we're working on. But here's the thing. We spend most of that meeting just listening. We open up the conversation and we ask a few prompting questions to understand feedback about their experience. What's their experience like learning in the organization? Have they attended any of our programs? What were the trainers like? What was the content like? What's missing? What would they like to see us be offering that maybe is not currently offered? And those are the basic questions. But then we look for other problems, maybe have nothing to do with L&D. We try to gather as much information about the challenges that they have as an employee in the organization. And yes, it may not have anything to do with us. We may not be able to solve that, but we can listen, we can capture the data because it's adding to our data source so that now we can continue to increase our vocabulary and our awareness of the business, but then we can synthesize that data and we can start to share that with our business partners. I can't tell you the number of times I have shocked a business partner when I went back to them after one of these calls and said, hey, were you aware that problem X, Y, and Z were happening in this business unit? No. And how did you figure that out? Oh, well, we connect with your frontline employees once a quarter, and we had a conversation recently, and this is what we learned. We can't necessarily solve this with training, but here's some ideas that we had about that. Business partners like, what? Wow, how did you know that? And the challenge is a lot of our stakeholders are so far removed from the frontline workers that they aren't even aware that that's happening. So that's our value add. We can be that connector. We can share that information with them. So identify your champions. The next is figure out who your indirect stakeholders are. We know immediately, if I said, hey, who's your stakeholder? You'd know who they were. Who are the ones that you're not thinking of? If you double click or look right outside your inner circle, who is it? Who are you missing? And I'm going to give you one example, the CFO. The CFO should be one of your stakeholders that you're thinking about when you think about your strategy, when you think about how you're measuring your effectiveness, when you're thinking about who to connect with. The CFO is responsible for understanding the value of every single business unit in the organization. Now, up until about 3 or 4 years ago, I never had a relationship with a CFO. So if I'm the head of learning and I'm not talking to the CFO, how are they figuring out what our value is? How do they know what we do? How are they determining our budget or cutting our budget? I was so curious by this that I made this the research for my doctoral dissertation. I studied CFOs of Fortune 500 companies to understand their perspective on learning and development in the organization. And one of the biggest things that they told me was, build a relationship with us. Stop sending us Excel spreadsheets with ROI data that's not meaningful to us, because the way you're calculating does not equate to the way that we're calculating. So I don't even consider that. Why don't you talk to me? Ask me what's valuable to me from a data set. Ask me how my ROI model works and how it might be able to apply to yours. And tell me some stories. Tell me some qualitative data, not just quantitative. Don't just send me the hard numbers, but what's the value that you're actually providing across the organization? Make it real, make it meaningful to me. So if you don't already include your CFO, consider including your CFO in your stakeholders. The next is create a partner commitment and expectation charter. What I mean by that is, if you are, imagine if we all came with warning labels. You're meeting somebody for the first time and they just had a warning label across their head. It would probably make our lives a lot more easier. Give you an example. I thoroughly dislike, for a better word, the phone ringing. My ringer is never ever turned on. So imagine if we just met and you were building a relationship with me and you're calling me as my stakeholder and I never answer your call. You'd probably be a little bit irritated by that. In fact, that actually happened once. I had a stakeholder who was calling me for about a 2 or 3 day period. I never picked up because I never saw it was ringing, and he never left a voicemail. So one day he blows up at me. Am I not important enough for you to pick up the phone when I call you? Like, whoa, sorry, my ringer's never on, so I don't know that you called. And you didn't leave a voicemail. I don't need to leave you a voicemail. Well, my expectation is if you need me, you'll leave a voicemail. His expectation was if I call you, you'll pick up. If we had talked about that expectation up front, it could have been very clear to us what we actually should be offering to each other and how we might work better together. So there's a template in the book, but it's very basic. You don't need a template. It's a conversation that you have with your stakeholder to identify your commitment level, your expectation. How often do you want to communicate? What's the best way to communicate? Like for me, I'm a texter. So I ask my stakeholders immediately, hey, how do you feel about texting? Is it intrusive to you? Are you okay if I text you? Because if you need something, you can text me anytime. I will respond in 3 to 5 minutes. Just don't ever call me because I'm never going to answer my phone. You can email me as well, but love texting. So having those conversations really helps to build a relationship and start you off on the right foot. And even if you already have your relationships, because we're not new in our organizations probably, you can still go back and you can start this commitment and expectation charter now. And it's a great way for our stakeholders to start to see us a little bit differently. And the last one, and this one's really important for us, watch your language. Watch your language. We have our own vocabulary, our own acronyms, level 3, MOOC, LXP, LMS. Do you think anyone outside of L&D cares about that? No, they don't. You go to your stakeholder and say, hey, we're going to launch a MOOC. They're like, what's a MOOC? And then you have to explain to them what a MOOC is. Oh, well, MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Course. What is that? Oh, it's a e-learning. What e-learning? What do you mean? Oh, it's a WBT. What's a WBT? Oh, it's web-based training. Oh, you mean like digital content? They've completely turned off with us by that point. We have to use the vocabulary and terminology that's meaningful to them. It is not their responsibility to understand our language, but it is our responsibility to understand their language. Ask them for an acronym guide. Ask them for a definitions guide. Look at the strategy, mission, vision statement. Look at PowerPoint decks. Get the last 5 or 10 that they've created and figure out what's their vocabulary, what's their words that they're using, so you can use those words as well, so that you can sound like you understand their business. That's what we have to do, is convince them, I do know your business. And here are ways that I know your business, because I'm using your vocabulary, I'm using your acronyms, I'm talking to your frontline workers, I'm identifying all this data, I'm distilling it down, and I'm sharing it back with you. So watch your language, identify champions, identify your other stakeholders, and set an expectation and commitment charter with your stakeholders. This is strategy number 2 for evolving to being a trusted learning advisor. All right, into the home stretch. Strategy number 3. I would guarantee that all of you could agree with this next statement, or this next idea or dream, if you will. And that is, how amazing would it be if we could just get a seat at the table? If I could, I can't think of how many times I've thought of this, but if I could just get a seat at the table, I could make a difference. I could demonstrate my value. I could have a voice. In fact, that was part of the name of this session is, hey, how do we get a seat at the table? But I want you to change that mindset. I want you to evolve that mindset. Stop trying to get a seat at someone else's table and build your own table. Build your own table and invite people to sit with you. So this is one of those thought leader statements. And I'm going to share how it works in practice, but I just want to hold on this moment. Stop trying to get a seat at someone else's table and build your own table and invite others to sit with you. So what does that look like? Here's a couple of examples that I've used. We're all talking about skills, skill advisory, skill upskilling, second skilling, reskilling, AI skilling. It's like skills. Let me just do a quick check. Rosa, we have another 30 minutes, don't we?
Yes, we do. So
Okay, just checking. I couldn't tell if it was right at the top of the hour or if it was 30 after. Okay, good. So we're all thinking about skills, and if you're not, you should be, because it's our responsibility to be upskilling, creating skill opportunities for our employees. Now, there's a lot of conversation happening in organizations. Sometimes I'm involved in it, and sometimes I'm not, which kind of blows my mind. I hear conversations or I see emails, and it's like, oh, we need to build this skill. I'm like, why don't you come to me? That's kind of my job and my team's job, and we'll help you with that. That's what we do. One thing that you could do to get control over this, which I have done, is to create a skills advisory committee. Or if that vocabulary doesn't work, how about a skills advisory council? Or, I don't know, skills advisory think tank, whatever you want to call it. But we're giving it a formal name, but it doesn't need to be formalized. You don't need to go get permission and put a charter together and all that. It's simple. We're creating a space that we are curating, controlling, leading, deriving the conversation. So what I do is every 6 months, I invite some of my key stakeholders together. I invite some C-suite. I invite some managers, some of my team, and some frontline workers who are the ones that are impacted by these skills. And I bring them to the table and we have a curated conversation on what we're doing in an organization to support this. But here's the important part of this. You have one shot. The first time you try and pull this group together, if you are not successful in this, that's it. It's going to take you a long time to try and rebuild that trust. So you have to make sure that you are curating this appropriately. And here's what I do. I bring in outside data. So it's not my voice. It's not Keith sitting at a table saying, hey, here's what we need to be doing. Here's what you all should be doing. I leave my voice out of it. I think of myself more as a maestro, as a conductor, maybe a puppeteer a little bit. And I start with external research, World Economic Forum, McKinsey Global Institute, Deloitte, free research from all of those research firms about our organizations, our industry, the skills, and where we're headed. So start with gathering the research from them. Where's your industry headed in the next couple of years? Pull that research in. I will then bring in outside individuals to be a part of the committee. I look to my ATD network, someone maybe in the same industry, also maybe somebody outside of that industry. There have been times I've brought competitors to the conversation. At GM, I would bring Mercedes in because GM wants to know what Mercedes is doing. Mercedes wants to know what GM is doing. You know what? We're all trying to solve the same skills crisis. So yes, we might be competitors in the market, but we're all L&D practitioners trying to achieve the same goal. So I bring all these people together. I include the external research from the research firms. I include the internal research from my design thinking, from my champion research, from anything else I've learned. So that again, it's not my voice, but here's the data, here's the research to back it up. And I curate this conversation. That starts to change how our stakeholders see us because I've built this table and I'm inviting them at a specific time to join this table at a meeting hosted by me. And just a small thing about you setting the meeting already gives you that control. When we're trying to sit at somebody else's table, another way to say that is we're trying to join somebody else's meeting. It's their meeting, their agenda, their conversation. Sometimes it's hard for us to speak up, get our voice out. But if it's our meeting, our agenda, we're curating it, we're inviting the people, we get to control how that meeting flows. So that's one way you can build your own table and invite others to sit with you. Another way, if you don't already have an internal learning conference, create one. You don't need to just go externally to other organizations or other industry conferences. You can create your own. At GM, it was one of the best things that we did to start to change the way our stakeholders perceived us. We created LearnCon, and each year we would bring in a couple of keynote speakers. I would look to partner with my stakeholders and have them share some of the case studies of successes that they've had. Usually I pick maybe 4 stakeholders who will have 4 case studies. Really, it's about what we did for them, but we don't position it that way. We position it as the success that the stakeholder has had, and it was L&D that was supporting them. But we make it about them. We give them an opportunity to share their story because at the end of the day, here's our goal as learning and development practitioners, as trusted learning advisors. Our goal is to make our stakeholder the hero of their own story. Our goal is not to make ourselves look good, to pat ourselves in the back, say, oh my God, L&D is fantastic, we're the best. No, we're here to support our stakeholders. We're here to support our learners, help them grow and evolve. So we make our stakeholders the hero of their story. We get to win in that success as well, because we know they couldn't have done it without us. We're there on stage. We're the one curating this event. We're inviting them to our event to speak. And I find that it really appeals to people's ego when they get that invitation. And I've not really had anybody say, no, I don't want to come and speak. They do want to share their story because it's of benefit from them, for other stakeholders to see the successes that they've had. So it is a win for everybody involved. So if you haven't already done that, consider creating a learning conference. And then bring in outside people from your learning conference, just not internal. Make it exciting for people to want to join with reputable keynote speakers. Again, it shows your breadth of network and connection in the world, essentially, which is another factor that starts to help individuals, stakeholders see us as trusted learning advisors, to see our value. And here's one more I'll share with you. We often have a brand image challenge. I know I do. When I started a lot of organizations, I'm always starting, it seems, with order takers. I'm starting with the fact that historically our stakeholders don't like us, they don't trust us, they don't think we're innovative. And so I've got to change that image. And sometimes it's really hard to change their belief in us. And so one best practice that I've started to do a little bit is sometimes I'll break off our ideas and I'll brand them as its own entity. The branding is such a powerful tool that we've got to start to leverage it more in L&D. And I'll share an example with you from GM. When I joined, we had really low net promoter scores. They told us, you're an order taker, we don't trust you, and you're not innovative. And they were correct. We were all 3 of those things. When we tried to be innovative, our approach was wrong. We would learn about a new tool and we'd go to the stakeholder and say, hey, there's this new VR app I think you can consider. Okay, but why would we consider it? What problems is it going to solve? Oh, I don't know. I mean, I just think that like it could be a really cool tool to consider. So why are you bringing it to me now? You don't know what problem it's going to solve. And that actually happened. And it was a learning curve for me. I don't know why I didn't think about that beforehand. I didn't bake out the problem. I was more excited of, oh, look what we've been playing with. We want to tell you how cool it is. So what we learned is, what if we branded the idea of innovation? So we just gave it a name. We gave it the Innovation Garage. We gave it a tagline. We gave it a logo. We gave it a color palette. And then we started applying design thinking to ideas for our stakeholders. So we'd look at qualitative research, we'd look at problems, we'd pick one or two problems for each stakeholder, we'd run a really quick design thinking initiative, we'd come up with some potential ideas to solve that problem, and then we'd package it up in a beautifully, clearly articulated with understanding what problem it's solving, and we'd bring that to the stakeholder. We'd say, hey, can we have 15 minutes with you? Just want to share with you a couple of ideas that we have on problems that exist in the business and how we might be able to solve those. It's our table. We're inviting them to come to our table to check out our ideas. I always say yes, because it's only 15 minutes. It's quick. It's quick. We're just planting seeds with them. So I'm going to share with you a couple of examples visually so that you can see when I talk about being prescriptive, clearly articulating it in an easily digestible manner, instead of just some verbal dialogue, it was something they could see. It was based on three components. We looked at business challenges, we adopted the idea of continuous improvement, and we included design thinking as our methodology. So I'll share, I think, two with you. The first is a 360-degree experience. So this is exactly what we present to the stakeholders. So start off with, hey, we'd love to share with you an idea we have about how we might be able to use 360-degree experiences. So the business problem, that we're thinking about for you is, how might we create immersive learning experiences? Because we know we want our learners to be immersed in what they're learning. So how might we be able to create immersive learning experiences? And how might we comes from design thinking. So we tell them, what's the purpose? The purpose of this tool is to create experiential learning. Every idea we have has 5 components. We have to clearly articulate the benefit. We have to clearly articulate the success measurement, how we're going to deploy it, how it's currently used, if it's currently used, and how it might be used in the future. And so when we present this with our stakeholder, it's the same format for each idea. And so it became a beautifully, clearly articulated way to describe our solutions and describe our ideas. So we would approach it, we would explain this, then we'd let them have the hands-on experience with it. And in fact, here's an example of how we were able to launch a vehicle in South America without the vehicle even being there, because we created 360-degree immersive experiences through their mobile device. And then we gave them the Google Cardboard, and it's like they're actually in the vehicle experiencing it. So that's one example. Here's another example. We would look at like a chat bot as a tool, and we'd present to our stakeholders, okay, I'd love to show you really quickly an idea we have. We know that knowledge retention is important because it's part of the science of learning. So how are we creating these spaced learning interventions? So for us, it was, how might we extend and reinforce the learning after that formal learning event has occurred? The purpose is reinforce, engage, maybe answer, maybe inform. Chatbot is a great tool for that. So again, we followed benefits, success measurement, deployment method, current use, and future use. And then we would have a prototype or a pilot of how the chatbot works, and we'd show that to them. So this really started to change how our stakeholders viewed us. So when I talk about building your own table, think of it like a roadshow. Brand your ideas, package them up, and make them prescriptive to the stakeholder. Don't make them huge so there's a cognitive overload. They can be just small little wins, but packaging it up and kind of separating it maybe from us sometimes helps to change their mind, because they're a little bit more open to that. They were not open at all. If I had gone to them and said, hey, I'd love to pilot a chat bot with one of your problems. No, not interested in that. We got to get sign off, got to do all that. Why? It's just an idea. These tools, they'll sometimes let you prototype them for free with a small little group. So that's what we did. We didn't ask permission because I'm trying to solve a business problem here. I don't need any of your content, don't need your engagement. We're over here in this sandbox environment, prototyping, testing out things. We think we have a right solution. We just take it, we package it up, make it pretty, and then present it. This started to change, as I mentioned, their way they approached us. So, for example, our NPS score when we started was 33, which is low. Anything below a 50 means there's opportunity for improvement. But you can see over a 4-year period, we started to change the trajectory of how they reviewed us, how they thought of us. Started as order takers, ended up on that path to being trusted learning advisors. And they told us that through their scores. They told us that through bringing us into the conversation before, not after. They told us that because we were sought after, we were respected, we were treated with trust. It's a really beautiful journey and experience when you can start to see that transition. What's important here is it took 4 years for that to start to change. And it's not finished. You don't get to that end goal. You're like, okay, whew, I'm done. I'm a trusted learner advisor. Now I can move on. It's continuous. It is a journey, not a destination. I am treated some days as an order taker, some days as a trusted advisor. It goes back and forth. But regardless, my mindset is that of a trusted learning advisor. And so even if I'm being treated as an order taker, I know that I've got to continuously be working to try and demonstrate my credibility, my level of expertise, which we do that by keeping our skills sharp. And remember, we are learn-it-alls, not know-it-alls. So we don't have to know everything. We just have to know how to find the answer to it, hence being learn-it-alls. So quick recap. Keep your L&D practitioner skills sharp. We have to keep learning, not just for our learners, but it's for us as well. We have to be credible, believable experts. We have to cultivate our relationships so that we are embedded in the business, and we have to build our own table to invite others to be sitting with us. And I'll leave you kind of with two final thoughts. There's this idea of being a vitamin or being a painkiller. Now, people like vitamins, but they don't necessarily see the benefits. They take it because it's kind of a nice to have, maybe there's some benefit there. I'd like to think that there is, but I don't see it tangibly. And there's a painkiller. There's an acute problem. And I don't know about you, but when I am in pain, I am grabbing a painkiller. Of course, it depends on the strength of pain for the strength of the painkiller, but nonetheless, I don't sit here in pain. I do something about it. I grab the solution, whether I like it or not. I'm going to take that painkiller for relief. That's what I want to be. I want to be the relief for my stakeholders. I don't want to be that nice to have where they don't know if there's really true value in there, but sometimes maybe they'll take it, sometimes they won't. When you're in pain, you grab that painkiller. That's what we want to be. To do that, we have to keep in mind one final thought. We talk a lot about the future of work, the future of learning, skills, and it's typically talked about as if it's out there somewhere. Somebody else owns it. It's like, yeah, the future of work is coming and, we're going to be prepared for it one day, but it's not really today. Well, first of all, the future happens one day at a time. So literally you wake up tomorrow and it's now in the future of what it was today. And it's just little incremental changes. And then the big changes happen, but we may not have seen them necessarily coming. It is our responsibility to see those changes, to see today that AI is impacting our workforce right now. It may not be clearly visible to us because it hasn't trickled down yet, but every single leader is asking themselves that question. How can I reduce my headcount? How can I increase my revenue? How can I be faster, more effective, cheaper? So that storm is coming, and we can help drive the conversation. We can help build that table, invite others to sit with us so we can be part of it, because we are the ones that are protecting our talent. We are the ones that have to help them evolve, develop, and prepare for this shift because it is going to impact them. And so the future of work does not just happen. You, learning and development, me, learning and development, we get to create it. And the only way that we can do that is by being trusted learning advisors. So please, we really have to evolve as an industry, if not just for yourself, for your colleagues, but more importantly, for the talent that we are ultimately responsible for. So with that, I'm going to stop. I know your brains are full. A lot more content in the book. You can check that out later. Rose is going to do a quick giveaway for a few people in just a moment, but I want to open it up first for any questions, comments, thoughts.
Don't hold back, folks. Keith, I have like copious notes that I took and probably going to listen to this about 3 or 4 times at least, because it was just so insightful. And really the very last thing that you said is what really sums it up, is that the future of work doesn't just happen. It is us. We are the ones that are driving what the future of work looks like, and creating those opportunities for learning within our organizations. And if they don't trust what comes out of our mouth, the ideas that we put forward, then nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I mean, this for me was just amazing. I really appreciate all that you shared here with us today. So, does anyone else have any comments, questions? We're about to switch over to do our raffle. Trying to get my technology to work so I can.
I would just like to say I ditto what Rosa said. It was excellent. Just like her, I have a whole page of notes to discuss with my team. Some of it is what I preach and teach to them. So it's good to have something documented from someone else. So this is just really, really great. I don't know how I will get the recording, Rosa, so please inform me on how that works.
Absolutely. Dr. Ruth, you're a new member, so I hope you'll be attending our new member meeting. That's happening.
I will. I'm booked for 3 meetings, so I'm going to attend for the first 30 minutes.
Love it.
Good for you.
What we do, because you attended today, we send out an email to all the attendees, and within there'll be a link. Ashley also does a great job, our VP of Communications, of sending out a newsletter, and then that link will probably be in the newsletter. And so, and we also share it via social and other ways. So we will make sure you get the link.
Thank you so much.
To share with your team. Absolutely, absolutely. The chapter taglines are involve, inform, inspire, and that's how we do it, is through learning. You know, we make it open for everyone. Yes, some things are member only, but other things, it's learning. So we don't keep it to ourselves. We share it with the community.
That's great, because they can hear it from Keith, and that, you know, and then they can know that this is things that I've shared with them before, and now it's not coming from me. It's coming from someone else. So
yeah,
it's so important.
They need to hear it in a different voice. Sometimes it has to be a different voice. And it's not that you want to like shake a finger like I told you so, but you know, hearing it in that other voice just lends more credibility to what you were saying, you know. And then, oh look, here's Dr. Keith Keating saying the same thing I said, right? And it just brings that extra credibility. All right, so we are going to spin this wheel
Spin it.
Give away 3 books. Let's see who our first winner is. Can you see this? Can you see my screen? Okay, excellent. Gabby Nervous, yay! So excited. Gabby, I will be reaching out to you after this to find out whether you want the Kindle version or the actual hard copy of the book, and where to send that to. Okay. All right. Next one. Walter. All right, Walt, I'll be reaching out to you as well. And we have one more Amber. All right. Our 3 lucky winners. And again, I will reach out to each of you right after the webinar is over. I will send you messages so that you can let me know where to what type of book, number 1, and number 2, where to send the book. Okay. All right. So moving back to what we were doing, does anyone have any further questions for Dr. Keys? As if you don't, then that is all that we had, folks. Remember to check out our website, check out those volunteer opportunities that we have, reach out to the board. They'd love to hear from you. Remember, we love you all. Thank you for supporting us. Our chapter has been around for what I think it's 41 years now that we've been serving in the local Central Florida community and actually beyond, because some of our members are outside of this central area. We appreciate your support of the chapter and look forward to seeing you again at our next scheduled program. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Ruth. Hey, thanks, John.
Thank you so
all.
much.